Hey everyone, welcome to Data Innovation Summit 2020 and welcome to the decade of data and AI industrialization. This year we are celebrating a 5-year anniversary. Yeah, and we are truly celebrating that we are going from the last decade of pioneering and piloting into a decade of industrializations. So let's stop right here. In the midst of a pandemic, where are we at 5 years in for this conference? If we take the pulse on all our partners or the practitioners, people in the industry, public sector, private sector, what is on top of our agenda this year? What's the theme that we think we should be talking about, all of us, and that you should have in the back of your mind throughout all the presentations you will see this year? So for us, it's clearly that we have come so far now, so that on a strategic level, the importance of data innovation and AI is unmistaken. And just looking at all the different partners we have and we are working on with this year, it's clearly that we have technology. And it's not like if you're the Googles of the world, really super cutting edge, you are looking for more stuff. And in some ways, maybe we are looking for ways to make life simpler and easier and all that. But in reality, technology we have to get started and get moving. So what's the number one thing we should really be dealing with? And what is the one thing we are struggling with? Well, we think it's the how topic. So not the why and the what, but the how topic. So how do we go about to really operationalize data and AI? How do we go about making it part of our daily operations? This how topic is what this going to data and AI industrialization is all about. Now, what is interesting is that this how topic in many ways is a classic middle manager challenge. Yeah? So you have the strategic discussion on the board level. We need to do things, we need to automate, we need to optimize. We have technology discussions or very technical discussions on a very nitty-gritty level, the data scientist, the platform, the data, is it clean? But the challenge we have right now is that how do we orchestrate work? How do we operationalize work? That seems to be where the real blocker is and where we really need to get more focus if we want to accelerate. This middle manager challenge, I actually had in a conversation with one of my clients in the mining industry last year, a quite interesting theme came up. You know, should we do things top down? Should we go bottom up? How do we really drive the how to operationalize things? And then one very smart individual said, we should start talking about middle out. So the real challenge, the real work, the real tricky place to be right now is the middle manager. To take what the strategic direction says and now doing something we have not done before. And especially if you're coming from an organization with a proud analog legacy, you know, how we organize, how we steer, how do we structure the team, how we balance the teams, it's new. So this middle management challenge, the how, what sometimes also we have referred to as the operational vision, it's really key in order to get moving as an enterprise. Now, last year we coined the word data and AI ready, to dare. We need to dare. We need to dare to reach new frontiers. This dare is, in a nutshell, the pursuit of data and AI industrialization and stabilization. So this is really where I think the real challenge is. Now, I want to put this to you that I think this is, that we go on this journey to dare is something that is of societal concern. If we think about the companies that are coming from an analog background, you have produced something, you have physical products, you have physical assets, you have a physical process, that we succeed, that these companies and organizations succeed, is of a societal concern. Why? Because right now we also see a growing data and AI divide in the world. We see it in some few superpowers within data and AI who is really driving, and most of us are playing catch up. Now, why I say this is a societal concern is that I think that it's better if we can reinvent ourselves, our traditional companies, to be part of this new future rather than being disruptive from a powerhouse. So if we can manage to get this journey, to drive the DARE journey within our organizations, we will have a better world. We will have a more equal world, we will have a more inclusive world, we will have a more diversified world, and we will have less of the segregated world of the haves and have-nots within data and AI. So for me, this is a real passion. Now, actually, what I'm talking about here is actually, to some degree, the pivot of the decade. This is the real pivot of the decade if you're in this industry. The pivot from piloting and pioneering to become data and AI ready to industrialize and stabilize your ways. And essentially, the vision that I'm talking about when this is stabilized is when we have truly cross-pollinated our business domain or the domain we are in with data, AI, and software. So we are living in a new core. Our organization is a new core where this is functioning as one. Now, let me now share a couple of minutes my personal pivot. You see, I'm one of you. We coined last year, if you went to this conference, DARE Legends. Basically, all of us that is working on this topic to make our organizations data and AI ready. If we are in a coder, if you're a leader, or if you're in the industry supporting this, we are all DARE Legends. And I've been one of those DARE Legends, part of the energy industry for many years. Now, what happened to me was essentially a creeping realization that we need to do things differently. A creeping realization that piece by piece, by working on it, that what we are doing in our enterprises or in our organizations in the public sector, in the private sector, compared to what we should be doing, it's a mind shift. It's a fundamental shift. Now, with this creeping realization, actually it led me to quit my job. I found my why. What am I good at? What I believe in? What am I passionate about? What is something that I think is actually really important for society, but that I also can make a living around? So basically, to work on these topics is my true passion. Now, what I thought I'd like to do now, I would like to share you some of those key realizations, how I sort of started to feel about the data and AI divide, what we were doing compared to what we should be doing. And ultimately how this has led us moving forward on how to tackle this. So this, my personal why, I started sharing and discussing with a lot of you in this room, with my peers. And a lot of those things resonated with several of you. So we have now a growing community where we're trying to figure this out together. But these realizations, let me take them. All right, so let's dig into these realizations. What are the real realization, what the data and AI divide is all about, that really drives us that we need to be there? The first one, let's start with the wow factor. And with wow, I refer to ways of working. So the way of working, the way we go about organizing stuff, orchestrating work is fundamentally different. And it starts already with a mindset around analog first, and we put data and AI on top. It goes around how we view process static, we have line organization versus project, we are application centric. So it goes on how we are running the world based on how we knew it from before. If I contrast this with the sort of data and AI powerhouses, it doesn't work like this. They start with the data and AI first mindset. So the product, the technology, the algorithms is an ingrained part of how they're thinking about the process or service or product. multidisciplinary teams. We are not so worried about, application standards anymore. We are worried about data standards, coding standards, design patterns. So the whole idea of how we view technology is also different. This was the first one. The second one, we need to own it. The ownership topic, owning the problem, owning how we do things, how we work, owning data information ownership, algorithm ownership, ownership over our design patterns. So on all different perspectives, in the traditional enterprise or organization, public or private, this is a real hurdle today, that we haven't really figured out how we will work together when we are dealing with multidisciplinary setups. Also, it's around owning the fundamental data literacy, owning the business problem and how to translate that into a data problem. And it's about owning, that we need to, in the business side, own up to taking care of our data and algorithms. Owning the understanding from business to data translate, etc. So this was the second one. Think about ownership. This is a key topic in many ways that is challenging. The third one I want to highlight is that was a journey also for me, that I didn't see this until I got deeper and deeper into it. And it's the fundamental power of community and open source. So all the big data AI powerhouses has grown up with a strong open source frameworks, communities around that, and been developing communities within their organizations. In reality, you don't start developing a deep learning algorithm from scratch today. You tap into some frameworks, some open source frameworks, whether they're coming from vendors or they're completely open source. But ultimately, this idea we need to be much, much better at understanding. And ultimately, I believe this is the true way forward within their enterprise as well. So even if you can't use open source software because it's, you're a regulated organization, open source thinking and how you spread stuff within your organization, how you build communities, how you drive standardization through communities. This is key. The Tayloristic approach will not work anymore. We have different experts in multidisciplinary teams we need to figure out within our communities. We need to get out of tribal knowledge and into community knowledge to drive enterprise knowledge and enterprise value. So let's stop right here and reflect a little bit. Data and AI readiness, data and AI industrialization, the realizations of the data and AI divide. So why do we really need to care? Why is it that me together with a lot of my peers thinks this is the only way? Well, let me highlight that there are some underlying drivers, some underpinning factors that actually makes all this, to dare the only way forward. There are some internal drivers, and we talked about it quite extensively last year. In my opening keynote, I highlighted the idea of intersectional innovation. This is what we're doing. You have a domain and you're cross-pollinating with data and AI capabilities. You're creating a new core. Intersectional, you're living in the intersect. Perpetual innovation. We will drip feed data and AI algorithms and new technologies for the foreseeable future. It's not going to be the flick of a switch and then we are AI ready. It's a drip feeding exercise, and simply because that's the only way we can cope with the change. Yeah, perpetual innovation, we call this. We're going into a continuous cycle. Process becomes product. Business ops, data ops, DevOps. Development and operations as one. And then the last topic we talked about last year was the enterprise dare dilemma. How do we balance the focus on use case level where the real value actually is created as operational value and putting use cases in production versus the enterprise perspective? How do we balance that? This is the enterprise dare dilemma. So this was the internal drivers. What I put to you now is I want to highlight some key external drivers. So we will live in a world with distributed data. Okay, the more sensors and IoT we use, data becomes distributed. We come more and more into the conversation about edge versus cloud or the central parts. And this is fed, of course, by the emerging ecosystems. So in different industries or in the public sector, there becomes data and AI ecosystems. Energy system ecosystem, transport ecosystem, intelligent water ecosystem, sustainable city ecosystem, transport ecosystem, you name it. So there will be an ecosystem of players where data need to flow. So we need to have this idea of how we work in communities and open source. We need to have this understanding that the siloed approach will not work. The proprietary approach will not work. And then I move on and we can talk about fundamentals such as the network economy, the gig economy, and moving all the way into the talent war. How people will work, how we will be organized, how teams will come and go, but experts need to come in and out. It's changing, and all this is essentially fitting more to the setups of the powerhouses compared to the more traditional Tayloristic management. So that's why, in my opinion, we all need to dare. We need to dare to move forward. What I would like to do now, I would like to give you a hint on some key principles to get started. I put to you that this journey is actually not difficult, but it's damn hard. In reality, the key takeaway, what we have found out, is that you simply need to get started. And then you need to learn by doing and stabilize by doing. Now, so we have now, within the Airplane Alliance, this is a community, we are co-creating, having an open source philosophy on these ways of working. So we came up with some core principles that is sort of guiding us, and I think it should be guiding you how to think to get started in the right way, but eventually it's your own journey. Let me take these principles for you. Okay, so DARE principle number 1. You need to focus to build your DARE engine rather than projects. And this engine should be focused on a use case lifecycle, because it's at the use case lifecycle that we find the core operational value. And it's here we need to have the orchestration of a multidisciplinary team happening. Now, principle number 2. Your DARE engine must be balanced. It must be balanced in such a way that you are hitting all the facets needed to go from data to value. So the business dimension, the data dimension, the algorithm dimension, the UX dimension. And the idea here is that if you can have a common artifacts, common lingo, we can come together as a multidisciplinary team, work on the right phases together, but then of course be experts on the different parts. DARE principle number 3. Your DARE engine must encapsulate a learning organization by design. So you need to have the mechanisms to harvest what you have done in one use case, feed it to your community, to then reuse it and improve on it in your next use case. This is core of perpetual innovation. And it's core that in this way we can stabilize by using and improving both our technology, but also our structural capital, our way we work, if we harvest and reuse. Now, and DARE principle number 4. Your DARE engine must incorporate federated sharing and learning. You want to use communities as a way to create pull to drive standards. The community drives standards and improves and stabilizes by sharing best practices in this community. So the whole open source approach. And this is truly how you deal with the enterprise DARE dilemma. How you can be operational, use case, autonomous team, but at the same time scale. So please everyone, take these realization, make them your own. Take these DARE principles, make them your own. It's what we believe in working on this. I put to you, have them in the back of your head throughout all the presentations you will see at this summit this year. Are they saying the same things but different words? Are they relating to it in different ways? If you want to know more about this, in the opening keynote tomorrow that I will do, I will share how we in Scania Financial Services have worked on putting these DARE principles in practice on a global scale. And if you want to know more about joining the Airplane Alliance, to be part of an open source community, a peer-to-peer community, I will tell you more about that in a technology in practice session that you can find from Dairdux on Airplane Alliance. So with that, have a great summit. Thank you.